All right. We are delighted to have Derek Johnson join us today. Derek has come on the scene and basically the past year and has found and offered and sharing some amazing observations about some of the stuff that many people find non-understandable and chaotic. So, Derek, thank you for making time for us today.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, to get us started, maybe it makes sense for folks to learn a little bit. How did this journey begin for you? Where did this start?
Well, I've always had it always start out with my family history. My dad, my uncle, my grandpa, my great grandfather, all my great uncles, my uncle. Everybody's been they've been veterans. I'm a veteran. So we have a family lineage. We're son of the Confederacy, son of the Revolution. So,
Mhm.
so we date back obviously to our existence of our framework that brought us to this place in history where, so many people, they love their First Amendment, but it seems like so many Americans have forgotten that the first came with the second, the third, and the Bill of Rights. It wasn't that, you can't have one without the other per se. And then I just was someone who grew up loving history. I'm the kind that likes to let my mind and my imagination wander about, just how God works, how the world works, how the earth works, things like that.
Mhm.
But not too complex. I think you can overthink anything. And this is a prime example. So many people are the ones that do know kind of what I know are still kind of overthinking it, thinking that there's going to be just one like silver lining that just bursts through the sky or the TV, and bam, there's all the answers all in one day. And then the others that are kind of maybe new to this or they might know something's different. Well, that's where you have to know the framework of our nation. Why are we here? How did we get here? What's our origin? It's no different than if you're a football fan, for example. I'm wearing my team sport here today, but like we have an origin, and we have our little beef with each other in a fun way. Teams out there, but every team has an origin. Every team has history. Every team has something they do different than others, or like a ritual or something that they do. So it's the same thing with our nation. Well, we have a framework, we have a foundation, we have something that separated the Magna Carta and all the other things that they had tried before the Revolutionary War. We have a definitive line in the sand and a framework that brought me and you together today. You and I are here because of that framework. Everybody listening, we're here together because of that framework. We have this because of that framework. And it's a matter of not overthinking it. It is simplicity, but we've become such a norm. The norm has become such chaos and pandemonium and politics and fighting and division. That wasn't checks and balances that our founders talked about. So I started as a young kid. I just loved history, and I loved the history of that and the simplicities of the foundation. And our founders did really make it to where the framework does fit everybody. But then people started bringing in moral standards into politics, and it's more of a do as I say, not do as I do attitude. And someone could be doing it over here if they never get caught, but they're still publicly shaming someone for doing it who did get caught. But they're the very ones behind the scenes that are doing the same thing they're accusing someone of. And so we've got this chaotic kind of what people think is a norm, and it's not. And guys like me, from a military standpoint, are trying to say, look, emotions aside, all these different feelings aside, all these different social matters aside, gay marriage, this marriage, that marriage, all that stuff aside, those are things that fall in the category of morals. Let's go to the framework of a federal government, which would be our highways, our streets, our sidewalks, our cities. Let's look at the federal. That's what the federal is supposed to be addressing first. Is the overall security, the national security, the border security of us, because you can't have any kind of individual freedom if you don't have a guy who thinks like me or people who think like I do. Leaving morals aside, God will judge you, or whomever you believe in, whatever that is for people. So it's trying to get people back to that simplicities. And I've just been a person who's been able to kind of, I have emotions, but I can also set them aside and go, well, this is our framework. This is what the law says. This is what this says. And so that's kind of the background. It wasn't that I'm not a lawyer. I'm not anything like that. But, our founders made it to where, you don't have to practice the law to interpret the law. If you have a brain, you don't have to be a veteran to know what's going on by special operations. You just have to kind of understand the terminology, understand the chess work and the chess match of what that would look like. And that's not for everybody. But just because it's not for you doesn't mean it's not happening. And that's kind of where I fit in, is just showing people that, okay, this is all you need, and you got to read a little bit. But if you don't like to read, then you got to listen to people who do read and put this into a package sort of deal. Because, the number one question for me is always, what was the light bulb? And I'm like, well, there were a few things that showed that there was a blueprint, that a starting point, but you can't know tomorrow until you had this, and you couldn't know this until you had this. And, all these puzzles have been put together, and now we're in a different form of the operation. But, all throughout 2017, you couldn't have 18 without 17, 19 without 18, and 17. Obviously it sounds easy, but there's pieces of that puzzle that were put together, and then seeing what was next. And then, okay, there's that nugget, found that nugget. This is what they did. And, now we've got a blueprint. It's a matter of what the operation is looking like right now. And
you often point out documents that date back, in some cases, quite a long way, but especially since 2016 and 17, that once you put them together and take a little bit of time, and as you say, read them, and you don't have to be an expert to understand the stuff. It's in English language.
Right.
You can spot things that say, gosh, why has this been done this way, right? I've heard you use the term cognitive dissonance. So typically people think of that as, you look at two separate pieces of information or two separate facts, and I think you use the word don't fit. They just don't seem to play together. And you have to then come up with, well, why are they acting like that? Why is this say we should be doing it that way, and this says something else, or we appear to be doing it differently?
Right.
In the last few days, you've gone through on Truth Social and maybe other places some review of some of these documents. We compiled some of them. So as we go through these, what I'd encourage listeners and viewers to do, we've got QR codes next to most of them, and they can do their own research. So, don't take our word for it. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research, get involved, and understand this stuff, and you'll be prepared sort of for the next step when it happens. Make sense? So I've seen you refer to the Law of War Manual, and this has been brought up by others. Maybe take a minute, and what should we be looking for in here? What does it kind of mean in the grand scheme of things?
Well, the first thing people need to obviously know is the fact that the terminology around military and federal government are separate entities. The military, I'm a veteran, and I'm honorably retired veteran. So, and I love our military, and our military right now, the current military active duty and the reserve components and National Guard, their lives are on the line every single day. It doesn't matter what people think of, even as peacetime. But the first things first is our military was established first in our nation. The Army came first. The war articles came 16 days later. And then the Navy, and then the Marine Corps, and then the first flag, all in 1775, before the Declaration of Independence. And then our first Constitution was the Articles of Confederation, which was in 1777. So that was 10 years before the redrafting of that, or they tried to redraft it, and then they just absolutely scrapped it and then rewrote the Constitution completely. But the military is separate. It's a separate entity. Now, we never had anything in piece of paper that clarified that. It was just always a tussle and an argument, and that's what Congress has done through the years, has created this. Well, the Congress can declare the war. No, the Commander-in-Chief can do it. So anyway, that's always been, and people will continue, and some people listening will continue to go, oh, that's not right. But, what matters is we have a framework, and how the founders set up the framework. And in 2016, the Supreme Court, before Donald John Trump's nomination, so Ginsburg and that Supreme Court then, before the changes were made and before one passed, is the Supreme Court clarifying the first time in United States history that military courts and military laws are separate from civil courts and civil laws. Then they clarified that president and commander in chief are two separate roles, two separate duties, two separate obligations, two separate laws. And then they went another step forward and clarified that commander in chief is separate from the federal government. So that tells you commander in chief is commander in chief of the military, and then president is president of the Constitution and of the people. All right. And throughout the years, the military should have stepped in a lot more and removed any leader or any capacity in our government that went against the Constitution. That is why Marbury versus Madison is very important. 1803. I mean, we're talking 14 years after the Constitution was enacted. 14 years, we had a founding father having to go into a Supreme Court and clarify what a law looked like based on the Constitution. So how do you think we're going to look now versus 14 years after the Constitution? So the Military Justice Act was written by, it was clarified by the Supreme Court. It was bipartisan written back then. All right.
Is that the right one?
That's correct.
There we go.
In 2016. And then it was put into place, though it didn't pass until the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act, which is the defense budget for all of the military. So when you really think about that, the Supreme Court and Congress clarified this in 2016 before continuity government, and then they passed it, invoked it during continuity government, which is really key to understand for people out there that are tracking this. If this is completely out of left field, then you're going to have to go with the origins of the blueprint. All right. So that right there, that very act clarifies those three things. So the Law of War Manual is basically the Constitution of the military, if you will. It's not, but if you want to think of it like that, it's the Department of Defense's manual for a military occupancy, which means when the continuity government took place, and the federal continuity directives clearly show this. January 17, 2017 was the very first one, FCD 1, Federal Continuity Directive 1. All right. In bullet point 3 of it, it tells you to start with this one. Anything prior to that is null and void with this one. So that shows you that the one on January 17, 2017 is your starting point. All right. There was a second one that came out June 13, 2017. The first one is like the outline. The second one's the implementation of that. The first one's operational dates are listed in the Federal Register.gov site as 2018 to 2022. The second one is 2020 to 2024. So you see the overlap. Mm-hmm. But what a continuity government is for people out there who don't know what that means, a president has a presidential policy directive, a PPD. It's actually PPD-40. All right. When a president has that policy directive keeps the three branches of government functioning for their national essential functions. All right. So that means they have like the defense budget. That's what keeps our military going. There's certain things they won't be looking at during this time period. So the national essential functions will be obviously defense budgets, things of that nature. Then also if there's tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, disaster, those are obviously important because that's our people. All right. So national essential functions. So when the federal government's under a continuity government, if you will, I mean, I had to explain this to a lawyer this morning because this is the military side of things. So the Constitution's put on pause, if you will, because the continuity government means all three branches are going under a devolution and a reconstitution. Those are all outlined in these continuity directives, what a devolution is and a reconstitution. All right. So when they're under that, the military takes control and what they call a military occupancy, and the Law of War Manual is what they're operating under. And it's not easy to read. It's not. It's 1,254 pages, and they just did an addition to it recently, just a few weeks ago. But you know, for layman's terms, when you hear people hear military takeover, they think they'd see something visually. No, they wanted to do it. This is a different kind of operation where they're cleaning out the swamp. As President Trump said, we're draining the swamp. Well, that means all your rhinos and your dinos, all the politicians, the career politicians, most everybody can have an opinion on who they think is a bad person or a bad politician or whatever. But that's not what it is in a different way. We're talking about the people behind the scenes, these mafias and all these global elitists who have all these billions of dollars, who are making these politicians vote a certain way and controlling them like little puppets, right? Because it's not always the politician. A lot of people, ran for good reasons and they're a good person and they get in and then they don't realize all the pressure on the back end. I mean, there's a lot of that some people know, but some people would never dream takes place. So that's what a military occupancy was. This one's for, was to do a clean out without the people creating panic in the streets and pandemonium and chaos. It's already bad enough in a different way. But if people knew we were in some kind of, takeover, you'd have people who don't like to take over either. And you might have people get out in the streets and it looked like a civil war again. And they were trying to do it as much as they could by legislation. And so I tell people there's two things going on. There's me who's awake. I see all the legislation back here. I'm reading everything and I see the visuals of what the military is doing because I know what I'm looking at. But the people who don't, they had to see things play out by law and order in a different way. I mean, everything that Joe Biden, if people thought he was a real president, everything he's doing, it goes against the grain of everything Democrats have stood for traditionally. Just like he was at the Grand Canyon just 3 days ago, all right, saying he's going to protect the Grand Canyon from uranium mining. It was the Clintons who sold the uranium one to Russia for $145 million. Mm-hmm. Why would Joe Biden do that? So that's just one recent example of showing if you're not awake and people who aren't reading behind the scenes and seeing what's going on literally by legislation, if you're just seeing surface talk every day, then you should think, why would Joe Biden do that? That's actually genius by the military. The military is making they're making Biden sign things presidentially for the people who are asleep. Then the Democratic Party can't come in and flip that around. They'd say, well, wait, the president at the presidential level, Joe Biden, one of the most known Democrats in history, right? He signed all these things that would traditionally go against the grain of Democrats and the grain of liberals. And I don't like parties, but we got to talk of it like that. He's going against this traditionally.
One of the things that hit people's radar, last year was when he signed the extension to the national emergency with respect to foreign interference. Right. So folks stood back and said, wow, what is this? Isn't this the guy that potentially got in by foreign interference?
Yeah.
And yet he signs an extension. It seems
that's a 2-year extension too.
He contraindicated. Why would he do that?
He signed it 2 years in a row, actually. And
that's right.
And that's the thing is the very key thing with this order here is the date of it. The date it was originally signed was September the 12th, 2018. Mm-hmm. All right. When you look at that date, that's 2 months before any election under Donald John Trump's presidency. All right. 2 months before. So the only evidence they would have had of any kind of election interference would have been 2016 and prior. All right. So that's the key with people. If people just hear that one more time, Donald Trump signed this order September the 12th, 2018. That's 2 months before the November 2018, November 2020, and November 2022, 2 months before it. So the only evidence of election interference they would have had was 2016 and prior. All right. Now, the other thing with that is the fact that election interference isn't just at the voter ballot box. Election interference can be smearing someone's, good record, good standard, good character, whatever it may be, coming up with all these different Russia collusion, Ukraine collusion, all this stuff. That's election interference as well. All right. Especially when he says over and over, I have 11 million pages with no typos. 11 million pages by multiple attorneys of his tax, all his tax records, all his history, everything. All right. So, naturally, and then bring in the moral again, right? Here we have a lady coming out after 30 years. 30 years, I feel for true rape victims who truly are raped because, you should receive help. You should receive the person should receive punishment. 30 years, you didn't say anything for 30 years, and then you got a guy who's a billionaire, who's the world figure as president, and now you come out. Okay, that's what we got to fix out there in society as well. So election interference. The other key thing in this order that proves everything, all right, for people who want to know, is the very line where it says, although, it says it in the second paragraph there, although there has been no evidence of foreign power altering the outcome or vote tabulation in any United States election. All right. It didn't say domestic. It says no foreign power has altered the outcome. Altered the outcome means my vote, Mr. Bill's vote here, everybody's vote. That means everybody. Altered the outcome. All right. The or vote tabulation, that little conjunction and those two words cancel out January the 6th. Keep in mind, this was written September the 12th, 2018. This cancels out what happened on January the 6th, because or vote tabulation is under 3 United States Code, Chapter 15. All right, vote tabulation is when they tabulate the votes on January the 6th. All right, January the 6th was not Donald Trump versus Joe Biden only. January the 6th is the day that they count the electoral votes, right? So, or vote tabulation is actually the objections. What happened? Alabama got through their votes, went to Trump. Alaska got through their votes, went to Trump. During the Arizona count, the third state, there were 2 objections. And after those 2 objections, conveniently, the insurrection took place. All right, well, there's no such thing as an insurrection according to the Declaration of Independence, first off. We have the right to overthrow such government that goes against its foundation and reset it on anew. But when the 2 objections happened, they were supposed to go into they were supposed to stop voting and go into a special chamber. And if it took 2 months, if it took 3 months, it didn't matter. They were supposed to work out why those 2 objections happened and the discrepancies with the state of Arizona. That did not happen. So this right here, 2 months before any election, and 2 years and 2 months before the presidential election, and 2.5 years before January the 6th, this cancels that out. This shows that this was put into place back here. So the other problem people, or I wouldn't say problem, the other thing people don't think about, this was not just for the presidential election. Now, the presidential election is traditionally bigger because it is a presidential election. But this order was to trap all governors, attorney generals, secretary of states, judges, and lawyers who do not apply the new laws into place for these election interferences. All right. This key order was the key order that allowed, by law and order, to have the evidence of the military going in and taking over the voter precincts and the systems. All right. Because guess what military does? Our systems run on analog. They can't be hacked. All right. So we have all the evidence when the military took over all the voter precincts. That's why the general tweeted that day, a 4-star general tweeted on November 3rd, 2020, we have what? Our United States Cyber Command and also National Security Agency and our partners all over the world watching in hopes that we learn what we learned from 2018. He's telling you, the people, that the military systems are running these voter systems. The military captured all in live time, all of the fraud on both sides of the aisle. All right. So this order put into place to trap, we got evidence on November 2018, November 2020, and November 2022. And now we have enough for the evidence to show people, and they're just waiting for the people, to wake up to this.
It's kind of interesting. In the past couple of weeks, a lot of folks have been talking about Dr. Halper Hayes, who was being interviewed over in the UK and came right out and said, oh, and by the way, Joe Biden's the legitimate president, but it's a legitimate president of a bankrupt United States that was formed during the Treaty of 1871. And oh, by the way, if you believe that the military does not, and Trump does not have the complete and accurate results of 2020, you're fooling yourself. And it was amazing how direct it came out. And within a day, I think, or a day and a half, Trump made a comment about, what wasn't it great what Ms. Halper Hayes came out with, and then Flynn backed him up, and others then backed up Flynn. Matter of fact, Laura Logan offered a an example of link to one of the documents just following 1871. So it was an interesting wake up call, and a lot of folks, I think you too, have said gradually this is moving sort of into the public eye where people can see it more easily, as it has to. I think it's just a question, as you said, of timing, making sure people understand and don't find themselves scared, panicked, whatever. Right?
Well, people want to know why President Trump, I've been around him twice, why he won't share my stuff. And General Flynn, I'm like, well, because I'm telling the whole thing and I don't sugarcoat it. All she did was sugarcoat it in a different kind of way, and also didn't tell the complete package.
Right.
Because if you tell the complete package too soon, for the masses that don't get it, if they don't seek to read and study like you and I do, and if they don't do that, and they just, somehow miss something, it doesn't create that individual responsibility that he talked about in his 2017 National Security Report, or strategy. Everybody, we all have an individual responsibility. You don't have to know every date like I do and every this. You don't have to know that, but you do need to know the general principles of when, where, and how we vote, and why it's important to have voter ID. Why do you have to have an ID to drink beer, but you don't need an ID to vote for a president? It's just little simple things like that.
You need an ID for everything, to drive, to get on a plane, to, go out of the country, come back in the country, everything.
Exactly.
To open a bank account.
Right.
And yet theoretically in some states, you don't need the, correct ID to be able to prove that you're able to vote. It's nonsensical, isn't it?
So, it really is.
So you've talked periodically about a number of different things. Some of the most fascinating I find are some of your observations about things going on kind of in the real world. Things that kind of don't fit. One of which, I took the liberty of grabbing a couple other things that you've posted recently. You've talked about, the notion of Gitmo. Periodically, it was supposed to be closed, and Biden, I think, ran on talking about, we're going to get it closed, and Pelosi was backing him up. And yet, even today, it's absolutely there. As a matter of fact, Catherine Herridge reported on it not only not closing, but expanding. And I was able to grab a little clip from her. If you don't mind, let me just let this run for about a minute, just so people can understand. These are not guesses. These are real things. Hang on just a moment. Let's take a look at this.
Handling of classified materials by the prosecution. This is a big project. It's over $15 million. So all of that goes to these interesting optics that here on the island, they're expanding the military legal process with physically a new courthouse, while at the same time in Washington, the administration is talking about shutting down the detention camps.
So, again, cognitive dissonance. Things don't fit. They say one thing, but then, it's the exact opposite. They're not closing anything. It's actually expanding.
Well, that's what I do with people. I say, look, let's just play a game of if Joe Biden was really president. Because, look, in years past, you only know what you know, but you still have to vote for the best of candidates as we know it. So if you voted for George Bush, right, and not Bill Clinton or whatever, or whomever you voted for, like whatever that is, all right, someone lost, as we call it. That's not the way it's supposed to look like according to our foundation. But let's just say our new age of thinking says, well, I didn't get my president. Okay, well, that means it's one of your candidates lost. All right, but did everybody flood the street and act like idiots? No, people went right back to work the next day and says, okay, well, it is what it is, right? But those of us knows what's going on behind the scenes. That doesn't really matter in the sense of let's just call a spade what it is right now. All right. So for people who think that Joe Biden's real, if you think he's a real president, then explain. There's a lot of things I can show why, obviously, with what happened on January the 20th, by military tells you he ain't. But, for the ones that don't know that yet, you go, okay, if Joe Biden was really president, most of the people who don't know that, but they might know their party's history, they could say, well, Obama put an order in to shut down Guantanamo Bay, but it never happened. Okay, well, let's just go with that theory. if the worst case scenario is for the Democrats or Joe Biden and his party and his administration, if they were real, if they still couldn't get it shut down, he could at least, by a presidential executive order, he could revoke Donald John Trump's executive order 13823 and issue a new order to shut it down. Whether it ever happens or not, he hasn't even done that. And he ran half of his 2020 campaign that he would shut down Guantanamo Bay. All right. So however you want to split that hair, that's fine. I can split it either way someone wants to split it. And I can run down whatever split of the hair and still say, well, okay, well, that wouldn't make sense if he hasn't shut it down for this reason. All right, why are these aircraft? That's taxpayer money. We're watching these aircraft daily go down to the spa, as we call it, Guantanamo Bay, Gitmo. We also have a lot of aircraft movement in and out of Guam right now, where we have federal courts. A lot of aircraft movement. We're talking about big aircraft too. We're talking about C-17s and C-130s. And of course, these little aircraft going to Gitmo they're not big, but still it's daily, and it's back and forth 3, 4, 5 times a day, what they're showing you on the apps. So it wouldn't make any sense. If Trump can shut down, he revoked Obama's order to shut it down, and he issued the new order. And it also shows that everything that President Trump says comes to fruition. He had his speech in December 2016, we're going to keep Guantanamo Bay open. The crowd roared. All right, he gets in presidency. He didn't put the order into place until January 2018. Then he changed all the court martial procedures, which was on December 20th, 2019. It's funny that December the 20th, 2019, all these things happened. Space Force was established. The Uniform Code of Military Justice had an overhaul done to it, which is military law. Had a lot of laws changed and added and tweaked. Also, the court martial handbook was changed by like 400 or 500 pages. Mm-hmm. Also, the War Powers Resolution Act was amended in Section 1550. That's the last amendment to it, where the president or Congress can declare war. The last amended section of it is Donald John Trump. All right, so all those things happened on December the 20th alone, 2019. All right, so the court martialing process is what we're talking about here. And it doesn't matter who is and who isn't there. It's the fact that they expanded it by $500 million. They expanded the courtrooms where multiple courts could be going on at the same time. And President Trump said we're going to load it up with tens of thousands of bad dudes. He didn't just say thousands. He said tens of thousands. Well, that shows you that there's a special operation going on, and it doesn't matter how long we go through it. That's the key thing I'm trying to get people to understand is if you are a patriot and you want the goodwill of our nation, don't worry about the time frame of it. Just know that there is an operation taking place. We got to wake up every day. We got to keep going every day as long as God has us here doing his plan, his will, whatever you believe. If you don't believe in God, then whatever that is, you're still going to wake up every day and find your day as your day if you're here. So how come Biden can't revoke that order? It's just one. I don't have a pen near me, but it's literally going one stroke of the pen, and it's and even if Congress, even if they didn't go through the process of shutting it down, he could at least sign an order to keep his quote unquote promise. He hasn't done it because he's not president, and I can prove all kinds of ways why he ain't.
And to what we were talking about earlier, he's actually done stuff that you would think that most, or at least many, folks in his party would say, "Wow, what are you doing that for?"
Exactly.
That's not what we want. Wait a minute, and yet he's not really doing what Republicans want either. When you talk about border and everything else,
right.
So it's one of the challenges to this whole thing. It becomes so chaotic. It's the movements are not consistent really with any given viewpoint. They're kind of like all over the map, and you get lost in the detail of everything that's going on.
There's a little live as we speak. Gitmo aircraft in the air making its turn right now.
Is there? Is the base? I think I've heard it referred to as the base commander's aircraft, the little the twin engine low wing.
Yeah, it's the Beech 200 Super King.
Yeah. So one of the things I really find fascinating is you often will focus on things about the military, because of your background, you spot them, right? And you know where to go to look to check things. And recently you brought up some inconsistencies that were visible, could be visible to the public, and you just pointed them out. Let me go back to our little slide deck here. Here's one, and I think I might have skipped over one page. Hang on, there we go. So Biden was on travel, and this was from, I believe, the Daily Mail, and they caught a picture of I believe, is this supposed to be a lieutenant colonel? Is that supposed to be the rank?
Supposed to be.
Yeah.
Correct.
Carrying essentially what's supposed to be the football. And yet after your review, you found things that just, again, don't fit. Maybe you could, we don't want to spend too much time, but maybe just run through what we're pointing to here that says, wait a minute, something's not kosher.
Well, I mean, hers is what you'd call all jacked up, and we won't use the other word that most military people use there. But first off, the over to your, if you're looking at the screen to your left, the arrows there, that label is not that pin is nowhere even in the pins, right? So, like, of course, I have the chart on my other that shows that one. That's not a pin. All right. Then you go over to the top here, the top right, if you're looking at the screen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they show you, okay, if you have 2 medals, this is how you would display your 2 medals. If you have 3 medals, this is how you display it. If you have 4 medals, this is how you display it. I mean, this is just basic simplicities of the military uniform, which we have Department of Defense uniform regulations. Then each branch has our own regulations of the uniform and where, and you know, your unit crest go, where anything. We have our units. So like the Army unit there, that U.S. Army patch, that's not even a unit. All right, so there's that. And then also the just a little thing like that's a colonel, a lieutenant colonel, you know, pin, but where's a lieutenant colonel stripe? It's just little things. And then also her badge is right here. It shows it. Yeah, there's a little one there. It's not even on the pocket. It's up under the pocket. There's just little things that you pick up on, and that's not something that someone, like, especially if you're a lieutenant colonel, like if you were like a private, a PV2 or a fuzzy, as they call them, the lowest level private. I mean, by the time you get in the regular military, as they saw, like if you're out of basic training, you're out of AIT, you walk out looking like that. Well, I don't want to tell what happened to you, but anyway, you know, like
you would be in line for some disciplinary procedures. Is that
you would? You're correct, and it's because they tell you to take pride in your uniform. You're not serving you anymore. Yeah. You're serving the Constitution. You're serving the nation, and you're also serving something greater than you. And you know, I take pride as a veteran. I don't have as many medals as I wanted because obviously I didn't get to stay in it like I wanted, but God had other plans. But what ones I do, they're intact. I don't add the ones I don't have, or anything of that nature. This right here, they try to get it as best as they can, but they don't. You know, and it's the little things that matter. The other thing is like her belt loop. The belt loop is not like on the. If you're looking at the screen, the right side, that belt loop's not there. That loop is not there on the new issued service uniform.
So this is just so folks understand. So your observation about this is created so that we think that we're looking at one thing and we're really looking at something different. Is that
well?
Is that a fair statement?
It's a continuity government for a reason. Like they're not ready to reveal everything to people, so the normal person looking at that would, you know, if they didn't question or if they didn't hear someone like me showing that, then they would just see it and go, huh, because they don't know what they're looking at. You know, it's obviously a military thing. To know the crest units, the patches, the patch board, the patch bay, whichever you want to call it, and then different medals and things of that nature. So it's a continuity government and a military occupancy for a reason. They're not ready to reveal what they're going to reveal to people when they do it. I'm not on that timeline either. I just know when they keep dropping these things. 3 days ago, the Grand Canyon visual that they show people with Biden. There's an Army soldier in fatigues, and this is a service uniform. All right, but in fatigues or battle uniform, whatever you want to call it, fatigues is what we call them. But there's a certain when you're outside in a fatigue, your cover, as we call it, your hat, whatever people layman's terms, it's a cap or a hat. But what we call our cover, when you're outside, that cover is on at all times. There's a soldier in fatigues right behind Biden with his back turned in full-fledged multi-cam fatigues without a cover on. That is an absolute no-no. All right, you would not do that on any circumstances. So in certain, that's the Army now. So the Army, that's their regulations. I'm not real familiar completely with like even Coast Guard and naval regulations I know a lot of theirs, but not, because I was in the Army, so I know the Army more than I knew any other. But there's some that I know. And then also the other optic with this is that while all of a sudden is the nuclear football such a major topic in the news, the world news, like this Daily Mail is a big outlet. So why is the nuclear football all of a sudden a topic for everybody? How many people would have known about what the nuclear football was before this topic with President Trump not going to the quote unquote inauguration on January 20th? That's when the topic began. The nuclear football won't be passed over from one president to the next. And ever since then, that football has been a topic. So there's a double here for everybody.
I remember, I think it was right after the inauguration, Pelosi was proposing that she and Congress be somehow granted access to the football. I think, and correct me if I'm mistaken in this, but I've heard others speak about the football as it's not a launch device; it's a communication device that allows the president or whoever it's assigned to communicate to those that have launch capability to take action. Is that right?
That's correct. The football is basically the emergency alert system. It used to be called the emergency broadcast system, but it's got the capability of communications with what we call the doomsday aircraft and the E6s that are, and then they've been flying every single day has the E4 doomsday plane and the E6, what we call TACAMO, take charge and move out. There's been at least one of each of those in the air every single day for the last probably 6 to 8 months, which is when President Trump started heavily on his military terminology comms hidden in his speeches. So it's very interesting that when he started making a lot more military comms, as we call it, a comm, ladies and gentlemen, really quick, be something like when President Trump was talking November the 15th, 2022, when everybody thought it was announced in 2024. He's talking about the economy and what Biden did and this, that, and other. But in the middle, he goes, pretty soon we're going to put our beautiful flag on the surface of Mars. Well, pretty sure 98% of the world probably thought he was talking about the red ball in the sky, and he wasn't. Military auxiliary radio system. All right. So there would be your auxiliary radio system. That's the emergency alert system, right? That's what he would take charge over with that nuclear football. And so all those things started happening at the same time. And the E4 was in that sky. It's been in the sky just about every day. And that doomsday plane is $159,525 per hour to operate. They ain't just putting it in the sky. They're not just training. It's been to Australia. It's been to England. And every time it's been where when they say Biden is somewhere, it's never anywhere near where he's at. So that would make sense.
Interesting. This thing with military looking different than expected has gone on for quite some time. I remembered and was able to find this picture before we get started. The top is from Trump's inauguration in 2017. And the bottom is Biden's inauguration in 2018. And by gosh, look at all the stuff that's missing from their escort as they're walked out in front. And this was taken during the proceedings when they're walked out front to sort of take their bows and prepare to, I think, go over to the White House. So a lot of stuff missing off the gentleman at the bottom.
Well, it's not even a correct uniform down below anyway, which would be in the president's period. I mean, you have the United States Army and the Marine Corps sentries that are typically around the president. the other day they showed a full-fledged naval suit, white naval suit around the president with a full-fledged Marine Corps suit, which then that was really the one that was like,
I wonder if I saved that. Hang on just a minute. I'll come back.
Yeah.
I may have. There it is.
Yeah,
is that
there
the
it
one
is.
you're referring to?
That's correct.
Okay.
You wouldn't. Well, actually, that's actually a Coast Guard uniform based off of regulations. When you zoom in the best you can, that looks more blue than black on the shoulder here, and then also the this would be on that's you're seeing on the right would be over on the left side. And it's just so much stuff that's like just all jacked up, as we say. And his pants, none of that fits correctly. Military makes you like, I could barely fit in my uniform, like my service uniform when I was in. They make it real tight. It's almost up to your belly button, the actual waistline. And I mean, there were times, and I had not gained weight in the military. There were times I felt like I had to, suck in and button real fast. And I mean, everything's tight around the neck. It's super tight. You wouldn't have anything. You wouldn't have wrinkles like that at all. I mean, it's everything fits. They want you to walk, up. It's like upright, but everything is, there's just so much stuff every day. It's jacked up every time you see anything around him.
Well, let's see. And then the other thing that you posted recently, which I found fascinating, it's been around for a while, is just the way that Biden himself looks. And I kind of skipped over it there for a minute, but maybe if you don't mind, let's take a quick discussion of that. So here's a picture of a zoom in. And I assume you're pointing out the way he looks and smile and so forth. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I get tired of people talking about plastic surgery. Look, I mean, I'm not knocking people who are old out there, but when you're already up in age, you're already gray, you're already showing signs of gray, you're already showing it'd be different if he would have been brown headed, all right, way back here, and it looks like this, and you get over here 25 years later and he's gray, it'd be different. But when you have a picture of Joe Biden at 76 years old, gray hair, his ears, his smile, his chin, when you have a picture of Joe Biden, all right, and then you see the Joe Biden that the media is showing you, plastic surgery wouldn't do that in that short period of time, just like that. Like earlobe to the very far left over here is detached, all right? Now it's attached. You look at the eyes right here, all the squints and things of that nature. Sure, plastic surgery could do that, absolutely. But you look like freaking Kenny Rogers. God bless Kenny Rogers, not making fun of you. Rest in peace. But you would look like, it would, they wouldn't leave it like that. You would look peeled back, not completely maybe, but you wouldn't still have definitive squints, definitive lines, definitive this. And then your teeth structure, like he's clearly been known for dentures and things of that nature, but still, I mean, your teeth, I mean, I've had dental work done. I have a few crowns in my mouth. I have horrible genetics, but, it's just certain things that they still fit the structure of your mouth. You wouldn't go from teeth over here to looking like that. There's just certain things that stick out. Your chin structure. See the middle chin there. Look at the rounded chin. Where did that dimple come from? Where did this bone structure all of a sudden? Where did that? It's just little things. Look, here's the little meaty in the middle here. It's not over here. It's more indention as a straight line there. There's just little things that you could see that,
Those are kind of the things that if you have plastic surgery, they're supposed to take care of, aren't they?
Well, not your bone structure though.
Well, yeah, that's true. It's just fascinating because folks see some of this stuff and that's just some sort of fake thing. But then, if you really do, I've heard folks say they've gone back and looked at simple stuff. YouTubes of Biden speaking back in the early 2000s and into the late 90s, and there's there seems to be some fundamental difference, and people really can see it.
Forget too, like movies you watch, right? If you watch TV shows or movies, you're not there when they're filmed. Most of you aren't, right? Unless you're working on their crew, but we're talking about no one who works in the industry, right? All right. So you're not there when they're filmed. You don't know what they're doing daily, right? We know for fact that the James S. Brady press room is not intact anymore. They're not using the press room that they used all these years, right? All of a sudden, they're different look. I mean, you can see stuff in the background, a playground set. You can see cargo in the background of Biden, right? They're not in DC. All right. And so when you think of things like that, right, they're showing you all these optics. But I mean, you know, I try to divert too, to show people history, right? Whenever our founders were going through the Revolutionary War and the history, they were living in the moment. I don't think they thought that we'd be sitting here talking about Thomas Paine and, you know, Paul Revere. And they probably didn't. Every moment in history that was some form of great awakening or some form of plague or some form of tribulation, some form of anything, the people going through it were going through it. They maybe didn't realize it at the time. They might have thought, wow, this is going to, like I know right now, this is going to make history. But at the same time, it's hard for some to see what they're living through is actually going to be history in the future. And it's going to be this. A great example would be football again. My dad told me for years, he's like, son, what I witnessed as an Alabama football fan and Bear Bryant winning 6 national championships, it's not, it's hard to win one. And every coach knows how difficult it is to win one national championship. So the odds of seeing history repeat itself. Well, it did. Nick Saban's done that. All right. You know, I'll get all kinds of hate for that. You know, people hate Alabama, but you know, but still, when you look at things like that, what do Alabama fans by the majority right now think? They're not thinking in historic terms. They're thinking, I want another. I want one more. I want another. Well, let's say Alabama goes to another 20-year stretch where they don't have a championship. Then that's where it'll set in that the history that they witnessed, right? Mm-hmm. But while you're living in that moment, you just want, I want another. I want another. I want one more. So people right now, you know, it's hard to fathom that something of this complexity could take place because it is a world operation. It's a joint partner operation that's outlined in the War Powers Resolution Act. And that's why I show all the aircraft daily from Germany, Belgium, Egypt, Algeria. I mean, I can't even name them all. Canada, Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras. I mean, there's so many countries in and out of the U.S. I mean, we have Canadian trainer planes stationed at a regional airport outside of Casper, Wyoming. That is the second War Powers Act all day long, land and naval use. You know, we train other countries, soldiers, sure, but we don't have their aircraft on regional airports. No, that ain't how it works. So that shows more of the operation. So it's just getting people to know that, okay, that it is an operation. This is what it would look like. Here's the laws and orders of it. Here's the orders in place. I mean, military works on a chain of command and orders. Aircraft don't just say, hey, boys, you want to fly to the U.S. today? That ain't how it works.
Yeah, at $100,000 an hour to go over. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
I didn't get a chance to pull any of those screens, but folks can actually see that on their own, can't they? If they go on ADSB Exchange or one of those apps, they can actually see aircraft in the air, select military, and often see, could be, as you said, could be Canadian, could be Brazilian, could be Belgium, whatever, over the U.S. And it's unusual to say the least, and really normally wouldn't be there, would they?
No, they wouldn't. And that's all outlined, once again, the War Powers Resolution Act, Section 1550. And, you know, and then, of course, it's all of it pieces together. You can't have one without the other. And it's what I call the blueprint, you know.
Well, I bet after listening to you during our session today, I bet people are going to want to follow you more closely. So where can they find you most easily and see more and learn more?
Yeah, so I have obviously the PDF file still up on thedocuments.info. So the documents, plural, thedocuments.info. Mm-hmm. And then I have my Facebook page, which is 1776 Nation Original. We had to change the name because there's so many copycats out there and frauds. You got to be careful with that, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of fraudulent pages that contact you I don't contact people, so I have to state that out there. So 1776 Nation Original. And then also on Rumble is Rattletrap 1776, all one word, no spaces, underscores. So my Rumble, my Twitter are the same. My True Social is at Derek Johnson, as it's spelled right there. Just no spaces, no underscores. And then Telegram, I post a lot because some platforms allow you to post a lot more content. So Telegram is where I can post a lot more content, as well as Facebook. But Telegram is Rattletrap 1776, and that's all one word, no spaces, underscores, anything of that nature.
Yep.
So
you mentioned earlier you've had the opportunity to actually meet President Trump a time or two, yeah?
Oh yeah.
So I guess one of the key questions is, does he seem pretty calm and confident when you've met him?
Oh yeah. He's I mean, he's still he's calculated, right? So he knows what he's saying, but you know, he's told me to keep up the fight, keep up the good work. And of course I joke with him. I'm like, well, you know, I didn't do this to be a podcaster. If you can somehow get me on your front line, I'll be glad to come. But he's real cool. He's real witty. He's you know, there's a picture of me and him where he had his phone up. I don't know who was on the phone. He had been on the phone all morning. He had both phones with him, which is a great sign. But he had one he was on, and he had it on speakerphone, and he kind of held it up like this before I was talking. He had it down, and then when I started telling the 5-time Major Brooks Koepka how he was still your commander-in-chief legally, he held that phone up like that, which is cool. But he's just real cool, and he listens. He doesn't you know, if you're sitting with him, he focuses on you. He knows he's protected everywhere. His Secret Service is swarming everywhere. Yeah. So he's real focused on you, and he gives you the time. And you know, I don't know. He's a great guy. I don't know what else to say. But
that's great. That's great. Well, and envious of you having the chance to meet him, and God bless him, and God bless you for the work you're doing, my friend. I'm sure we've got a ways to go yet, and hopefully we'll have the chance to compare notes in the not distant future. So we appreciate you making time today. I know folks have, I think, gotten a better notion of understanding and maybe how to understand even more as they go. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. Thank you for what you're doing.
All right. Take care.